Welcome to the Beyond You podcast, where we have real conversations about healing, trusting yourself again, and building the kind of relationships that actually feel good. I'm Samantha, and if you've ever felt like you're just going through the motions, like you're doing all the right things but still feeling disconnected, you're in the right place. Because here we go beyond the surface, beyond the hurt, beyond the patterns that keep you stuck. So take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's get into it. Hey love, welcome back to the Beyond You podcast, where we don't do surface level healing, we go there. We talk about the patterns no one warns you about, the pain you've tucked away, and the version of you that's ready to stop surviving and start living. Now I know Father's Day is this weekend, and if you're listening to this and feeling some type of way about it, know that you are not alone, because maybe you are dreading the holiday. Maybe you're feeling guilty because you should be more grateful, or you feel like you should be, that should in quotation marks. Maybe you're somewhere in between love and disappointment and you can't quite name what that feels like. Today, we're talking about something that gets thrown around as an insult but rarely unpacked with care: daddy issues. And yes, the timing is intentional because this is when these feelings tend to surface anyway. And I'd rather we talk about it honestly than pretend it's not happening. So no, there's nothing wrong with you. You were just taught to shrink yourself for love. And that's not a personality trait, that's a trauma response. And whether Father's Day feels heavy or light for you this year, you deserve to understand how those early patterns are still showing up in your life today. So I want you to stay with me here. Take a deep breath. We're about to get into it. Okay, so I wanted to first start off with recognizing that anybody can have daddy issues, right? And we'll talk about what that really means, because I know that can be really confusing. So let me start with my own story and just kind of seeing how it resonates with some people, because it can be a lot when talking about this, because I used to think that I didn't have daddy issues, right? Because a lot of times you think because it's a two-parent household that you do not. And because my dad was there. Actually, he was my primary caregiver when I was younger. My mom was out working, providing for our family mostly. My dad worked as well, but not as much as my mother did. And dad was the one who was with me most of the time. And maybe your story is different. Maybe your dad was the one working long hours and you saw him mostly in the evenings, tired and checked out. Maybe he was physically absent altogether. Maybe he was there for the big moments but missing from the everyday ones. Or maybe like me, he was present but sometimes inconsistent. Here's what my experience looked like. Some days he'd be fully present with me. We'd talk, he'd be engaged, asking about my day, really seeing me. And other days he'd be physically there, but emotionally somewhere else. And I know a lot of times you can resonate with that. Be emotionally somewhere else entirely. He'd spend long stretches in his room, sometimes smoking, dealing with whatever was going on with his work and dealing with his emotions when it comes to it, and wrapped up in his own world. And whether your dad was absent, workaholic, emotionally unavailable, or hot and cold like mine tended to be sometimes, here's what so many of our little nervous systems learned. Love is unpredictable. Sometimes you matter, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get someone's full attention, sometimes you're invisible. And a lot of times I started to believe that when he was distant or preoccupied, it must be something about me. And maybe you learned that too. Maybe you thought if you were smarter, funnier, quieter, more helpful, more perfect, then you get that consistent love you were craving. And I learned to read his energy before I even approached him. Is this a good day where he's present with me, or is this a day where he's checked out and I should just stay small? And maybe you learned to read the room too. Maybe you became the little adult, the peacemaker, the entertainer, the invisible one. Maybe you learned that your needs came second to whatever stress adults were carrying. For years, I thought this made me intuitive and good at reading people's moods, but what I actually learned was how to abandon my own needs to manage other people's emotional capacity. I learned that love was something that came and went based on factors I couldn't control. And my job was to position myself perfectly to catch it when it was available. And that pattern, that hypervigilance around other people's emotional availability, that belief that love has to be earned and re-earned constantly, it followed me right into every relationship I had as an adult. and maybe it followed you too. So let's be real. When someone says you've got daddy issues, what that usually means is you're too emotional, you're too attached, you must be looking for a man to fix you. Especially for Black women and women of color, it becomes this coded way of saying you're needy, damaged, or doing too much. But I want to be honest with you. You're not too much. You just never had space to be held. Because daddy issues aren't about seeking male validation. They're about emotional neglect, sometimes physical abandonment, but often emotional unavailability. Because maybe your father wasn't there, okay? Maybe he was physically present but emotionally unavailable like mine was. Maybe he only showed up when you performed, when you achieved, when you were perfect. And maybe he was dealing with his own survival, racism, economic stress, his own unhealed trauma, and doing the absolute best he could with what he had. And so what we pick up is we learn these things. We learn that love has to be earned. If you want someone to stay, you have to shrink. If they're upset, it's your job to fix it. If they're distant, you must have done something wrong. That's not a daddy issue. That is a wound. And wounds don't make you weak, they make you human. So for many of us, especially as women of color, our fathers were navigating their own survival in systems that didn't always value their humanity. They might have been doing the absolute best they could in what they had, and we can hold space for that reality while also acknowledging how it impacted us. So I want you to see the nuance for both, right? We can be able to acknowledge that something has hurt us, but also understand that someone's going through what they needed to go through as well, right? What they had to go through. So none of this was spoken out loud though, right? It was just absorbed the way children absorb everything. Your nervous system and just how you handle things was paying attention and trying to keep you safe. The problem isn't that you develop these patterns. The problem is that nobody taught you that you could update them when they stopped serving you. But understand that that's why we're here and we're on this, you're on this podcast listening because you're grown now, but the pattern is still running in the background. You might notice you overfunction in relationships, you pick partners you have to prove your worth to, you chase emotional crumbs and call it connection. You feel anxious when things are calm, like peace is just suspicious. That's not just relationship trauma. That's your nervous system trying to survive in a world that once made love feel unsafe. So let me break this down with some real examples because I know you guys love these real examples to be able to give to you. So a lot of times one of the things is overfunctioning. We become the emotional manager of the relationship. You're constantly checking in. How are you feeling? Are you okay? Did I do something wrong? You're doing the emotional labor for two people because you learned that love requires constant maintenance. Choosing people. The next one is, I'm just trying to get too far ahead of myself. The next one is choosing people who need fixing. You've drawn to emotionally unavailable people because unavailable feels familiar. Oh, this was me a lot in the early parts of dating. Available feels boring or like something's wrong. Your nervous system is just operating in understanding, okay, where's the chaos? Where's the challenge? How am I supposed to prove my worth that this is easy, right? And a lot of times we're not made to feel that love can be easy or made to feel that love needs to be a struggle when it does not have to be. So next is feeling responsible for others' emotions. When he's in a bad mood, you immediately think it's something you did. When he's distant, you start performing, being funnier, sexier, more accommodating, trying to bring back that warmth you felt before. Next is confusing intensity with an intimacy. That hot and cold dynamic feels like passion because it's familiar. The anxiety of, does he love me today, gets mistaken for excitement. Let me give you a real example from my own life. I once dated someone who would be incredibly affectionate and present for a few days, then would completely withdraw, not returning texts, being short with me, emotionally unavailable. And instead of recognizing this as a red flag, my nervous system was like, oh, I know this game, right? And then we do that. We're like, oh, I know this. Let me figure out what I did wrong so I can fix it. Of course, I didn't actually say those things, but I was operating because this is what was familiar to me. So I was operating in a space where, oh, okay, I know this. I know this feeling. I know this roller coaster feeling. So let me keep going or just trying to do things to earn this person's affection or love. And the pattern was his emotional availability is my responsibility to maintain, right? That was my consistent pattern. So if he's pulling away, I need to try harder, be better, improve my worth again. And a lot of times we do this when we're in these narcissistic spaces, or you're so into how someone was in the beginning, we're not seeing how they are now. This is exactly how we show up. And for my women of color listening, we often carry an extra layer here. We might have learned that we need to be low maintenance because the men in our lives are already carrying so much stress a lot of times. So we learn to make our needs smaller, to be the strong one, to not add to their burden. But your emotional needs aren't a burden. Consistent love isn't too much to ask for. So let me be clear. You are not broken. Nothing's wrong with you. You're in a place of conditioning. So remember, you were taught to shrink to be loved, suppress to feel safe, perform to be accepted. And now it's time to unlearn that. As you've worked with me before, I said we unlearn and we relearn, because you're allowed to take up space. Be loved without earning it. Choose peace over potential. You're allowed to feel safe in your body, safe in your relationships, and most importantly, safe with you. That hypervigilance, that's not a character flaw. That's your nervous system trying to keep you safe in relationships that felt unpredictable. That people pleasing, that's not weakness. That's a survival strategy you learned because you developed when you were small and needed to maintain connection to survive. You can reparent the part of you that thought chaos was love. You can teach your nervous system that consistency is safe, that you don't have to earn affection daily, that emotional availability isn't a special treat. It's a basic requirement. You get to have a different experience than what you learned growing up. You get to be loved consistently. You get to have your emotional needs met without having to perform for them. So let's get practical. Here are some ways to start healing these patterns. First is awareness without judgment. When you notice yourself overfunctioning in relationships, instead of shaming yourself, I want you to invite you to get curious. Oh, okay, there's a pattern again that I'm doing. What is this trying to protect me from? Second, I want you to practice receiving consistency. This might actually feel uncomfortable at first. When someone is reliable, present, emotionally available, your nervous system might not trust it. It didn't trust it in my relationship at all. You might find yourself creating problems or pushing them away because chaos feels more familiar than peace. Third, ask yourself this powerful question. Who did I have to become to feel safe? And do I still want to be her? Maybe you had to become the perfect daughter who never needed too much. Maybe you had to become the entertainer who kept everyone happy. Maybe you had to become the caretaker who anticipated everyone's needs. Those versions of you served a purpose. They kept you connected to love when you were small and dependent, but you're not small anymore. You get to choose how you show up in relationships now. Fourth, start small with expressing needs. Practice saying things like, right, I would feel more secure if we could check in daily. Or it would mean a lot to me if you could let me know when you're going to be distant so I don't take it personally. Or I need reassurance right now. Can you help me with that? And someone that is wanting to be there is going to have no problem with doing this. And finally, notice how you respond to disappointment. When masculine energy doesn't meet your expectations, do you immediately blame yourself? Do you get smaller? Do you start performing? Just notice the patterns. I really want you to start noticing the patterns that you're showing up and what you start doing, because it's going to make this difference. So let me give you some just real world examples of what healing these patterns can look like, right? But if you are ready to just kind of tap a little bit more, you can do these journal prompts before we tap into that, because I want you to sit with the journal prompt of who did I have to become to feel safe as a child, and do I still want to be her? And maybe you had to become the perfect daughter who never needed too much. Maybe you had to become the entertainer who kept everyone happy. Maybe you had to become the caretaker who anticipated everyone's needs. This little girl inside of you wasn't needy. She was intuitive. She picked up on what she was missing and tried to fill the gap, which says a lot about what you had to do at that time. And those versions of you served a purpose. They kept you connected to love when you were small and dependent, but you're not small anymore. You get to choose how you show up in relationships now. Now you get to show her she doesn't have to hustle for love anymore. She gets to just be. So let me give you some real world examples. Let's go back to that. Scenario 1, he takes longer to text you back than usual. Your old pattern might be, what did I do wrong? Let me send a funny meme to reconnect. Maybe I was too much in my last message. Like, you're overthinking. You're allowing yourself to go in really deep into it. Or the healing pattern, and just listen to yourself. It could also mean, we're not saying everyone's like this, but it also could mean he might be busy. This isn't necessarily about me. I'm going to trust that he'll communicate if something's wrong, right? Because we don't want to be starting off just really going in and how somebody is doing something wrong to you or trying to hurt you in some way. But I understand that will come up as you start meeting people who are emotionally available. Scenario 2, he seems distant or stressed. Old pattern might be, I need to fix this. Let me be extra loving, extra accommodating until he feels better. Healing pattern, right? The new way we could try to do things is, his mood is not my responsibility to manage. I can offer support without abandoning myself, right? So you can be able to check in of how this person is doing, but doesn't feel the need to kind of fix on how they're feeling. Like, allow him to be able to do things he was doing right even before he met you. Scenario 3, he doesn't give you the level of attention you're craving. The old pattern might be, I must not be interesting enough. Let me be more entertaining, more impressive. But the healing pattern can look like, I can express my need for attention directly instead of performing for it. If he can't meet that need, that's information about our compatibility. So understand that the goal isn't to become someone who doesn't care. The goal is to take care of yourself as much as you care about maintaining the relationship. Do you see the difference between that? So I really want you to be able to kind of grasp that in. So I just wanted to kind of add this tidbit before, Father's Day shows up, just to see exactly what that means and things that you can start doing. And understand that recognizing these patterns isn't about adding shame to your story. It's about understanding that you developed incredible survival skills when you were small, and now you get to update them for the woman you're becoming. Your father's capacity for emotional availability was never a reflection of your worthiness to receive love. You have always been worthy of consistent, present, emotionally available love. If this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who's healing too. And if you're ready to explore your early relationship patterns, know that I have a custom GPT that I'll put down in the show notes for you in my link to be able to really be able to show up for yourself and understand if you're in a space to be open to healthy relationship spaces. So make sure to check that out. And know that we send tips every Wednesday in our newsletter, so make sure to sign up for our newsletter to get those tips right to your inbox. So until next time, don't just heal, become the woman your younger self needed. You're not behind. Understand that you're becoming. I'll see you next week.